Welcome to the Holistic Soul Sisters Radio, a channel created to help you heal holistically and grow spiritually. I'm your host, Mandi Rose. I'm not afraid to talk about taboo subjects, so nothing is off limits here. Make sure you hit subscribe and get ready to learn more from me and other experts on all things health, spirituality, astrology, lifestyle, relationships, and so much more. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's begin. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Holistic Soul Sisters podcast. We are continuing with our mini series of Heartbreak to Healed. And today I have one of my gorgeous girlfriends, Tara, here with me. Woo! And she is going to dive into her personal healing journey and her personal spiritual journey and talk a little bit about heartbreak and how that felt. And, you know, I think a lot of times we go through this journey of really searching for love in other people. And really it comes down to loving ourselves. And I know it sounds super cliche. So if you're someone who's listening to this podcast and you just went through a breakup or you're in a relationship that is just not working out and you're constantly feeling that like sickness in your stomach and the breaking of your heart, know that you have two women here that are talking that have been there. Not just once, Amen. Not just twice, but probably more often than we'd like to admit because I did not learn my lesson the first time. That's for sure.
Who does?
And I have watched Tara go through this journey for the last 18 months and it's been so beautiful. And we've really connected on, you know, the deeper things like wanting to go back to that person or finding the ease and just responding to their text message or thinking they've changed and all the stories that we tell ourselves. And so she's going to dive in today and kind of give you guys not only her own personal journey that you'll probably relate to on some level, but also a lot of her own tips and tricks on how she made it from literally moment to moment. Because when you're in that heartbreak and you're laying on the couch and you're so sick to your stomach, you don't even want to get up and brush your teeth or brush your hair. And how do you even take the next step, especially if you don't even know what exists? You don't know how to find a therapist. You don't know, what's even going to work for you. So she's really going to give you guys a lot of value. And I think at the end of it, the moral of her story and the thing she keeps reminding me of is follow your intuition. So if you feel like something's off, explore it. If you feel like there's something better out there for you, it doesn't mean wake up tomorrow and just break it all off, but work on yourself in a really, intuitive way. All right, Tara. So before we get started, I want everyone to have real background on you. And I think this really helps put who you are in context. So what is your sun, moon, and rising?
Okay, let's do it. My sun is Pisces. Such a Pisces. My moon is in Virgo and my rising is Aries. It was just my birthday.
Yay! Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Another trip around the sun.
Yes, solar return. You already know.
And what is your life path number?
It's a master number. It's 33. Remember, we actually came up with this together.
I freaking love
because of you.
Numbers.
I know my master or my life path number.
Yes, 11s, 22s, and 33s are just some special humans.
That's me.
Okay, and then what is your attachment style?
So this is interesting because, there's obviously the avoidant and the anxious, right? And I think based on what I've learned and read about it, I used to be anxious. So weirdly enough, I feel like I'm the avoidant type now, if that makes sense. I think it had a lot to do with the partners that I had at the time. So I think it can change over time. But right now I'm an avoidant, if that makes sense.
What is your most toxic trait? Or what was your most toxic trait? Or what one are you working on?
I would say definitely what was my most toxic trait was the need for control and kind of like manipulating the situation to be a certain way to have control over it. So still certain things like I'll work through that and not being that same person, you gotta, it takes time. Yeah. But I've definitely, improved that for sure.
And lastly, what is your favorite healing tool in your toolbox?
Well, I would say it's funny because what I used to hate is now my favorite tool, and that's my Tara time, my alone time.
Tara time.
Tara time. It feeds my soul, man. It really does.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the interview then.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Tara, for being here, for being raw and vulnerable and honest. I know it's not easy to talk about our relationship failures, and I say that in quote because there are no relationship failures. We learn and grow through every single one, and that's coming from someone who's been married and divorced. And I don't even like to say that I'm divorced. I like to say that I'm unmarried.
Right.
Because I went through that, I learned some lessons, and now I'm unmarried again. till I decide to be married. You know, it's not like something happened to me.
Right.
I am now in a space that I'm unmarried and free to make my own decisions. So,
well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I know you've been there along this whole ride with me and you've seen it all. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I guess let's kind of start with what your relationships look like. I think this is probably the most relatable thing to you because everyone's kind of been through this series in their life. You know, if you want to kind of talk about maybe your first relationship or even into your 20s, maybe, you know, the patterns you notice. So kind of start with that. And then we'll get into like your final breaking point where you were like, okay, it's all about me now. And then what that looked like too. So
where do I begin? I also first want to touch on the whole initial moment of like where you feel like it's the end of the world and you feel like you don't know how to get out of bed. You don't remember how to function. You don't know how to do the day-to-day tasks, you know, like that deep hurt is so real. It is so real. And we've all felt that. So I promise it gets better, you know, and you know this too, as you go through the process and go through this with a few people, you know, you learn and you live and you learn. But I mean, let's be honest. So the thing for me was I had an issue being alone. I was always in a relationship. I'm 28 years old now. And ever since I was about 16, I've been in a relationship. So if you think about that, like that's a long time. So I, you know, would jump from relationship to relationship to relationship. I was so desperately afraid of being alone. And I looked for anyone and anyone to save me and rescue me and take care of me. You know, it's like this.
Disney fucked us all.
Oh my God. This helplessness. Like it was just so sad. Like I look back and I give myself compassion and all of that. And I understand where I was coming from now. But just where I was, like that was just such a sad place to be. You just don't know what you're going to do. You don't know how to get through it. You're just reaching for straws of hope. You're just like, how am I going to get through this?
Did you find it in most of your relationships that you were the one breaking up with them or they were breaking up with you? Because I think this is really interesting because in my relationships, I would hold on until they finally broke away. But I would almost push them away by like being irritable, by being bossy, by being manipulative, and then finally they had the courage to walk away.
So
how was it for you? Or was it like a mix?
So actually, I have honestly never been broken up with.
Really?
Interestingly
you were the
enough.
one who left.
But here's the thing. I would get to the point because I knew, you know, whenever I reached the point of breaking up with somebody, I knew 6 months prior that it was going to happen. So it would either, I would self-sabotage it or I would, you know, just get to that breaking point that you were talking about. And like, it just, you really do reach a breaking point. You really do. We all do at a certain point in time, but it just took me a lot longer because I didn't want to lose that person. I put so much time and so much of my heart and soul into that relationship. So when it failed, quote unquote, I felt like I was losing, like I lost, you know? And I was like, I was unable to see that it wasn't a loss. It was, you know, not meant for me anymore. It didn't serve me anymore. It was something that I needed to let go. And the sooner that you let go of that old in your life that's not serving you, you make room for the new. Like there's so much better out there. And like, I don't mean that in the grass is always greener, but when you know, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think that brings up like a really good point. Like you said, you feel like you lost. And I think so many of us see relationships, and like this might be a subconscious thing, but we see relationships as like a game to win.
Yep.
Right? If I just like do all the right things and they do all the right things and then we like win together and then we get married and have babies and we won the game of life, right? Like check it off the list, you can die now. But when we switch our mindset from relationships are games to relationships are like chapters in a book, and each one has a closing point, and you turn the page and you have like a fresh brand new page, you don't feel such a loss necessarily. You feel like a fresh beginning more than the loss of the last thing.
I completely agree, because another thing that I've learned too, and not just in relationships, but anyone that comes into your life, they're a teacher of some sort. They're a lesson. There's something there you can gain from that. And it's not always like, what can I gain from this? And that kind of like a ego mindset. It's more so like, what can I learn from this? Like, what are they teaching me this? What are they reflecting back to me? Because everyone that you meet, especially in your relationship life, is just a mirror of yourself, your insecurities, yourself.
Yep.
And I see a lot of myself in the people that I dated in the past. And I know now why I was so attracted to them. Whether it was something that they mirrored exactly of me or something that I lacked that they had that I wanted.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre because I'm sitting here with 2021 Tara and like everything she just said is so like you now.
Yes.
But this is not the woman I met in 2019. No,
ma'am.
You know? So
oh my God.
I know it's really hard to go back and get back into like our mindset like of the past because one, we feel like I was such an idiot. How did I think like that? And you also feel like, you know, my traumas were existent then. So can you kind of like talk about like, I guess that last relationship, because like you said, you've been through a lot your whole life, one after another after another.
Yep.
And there was something in this last relationship where you kind of hit that ultimate wall and said, okay, I'm not going to go into another relationship. I'm going to start healing.
Yeah.
So kind of like, can you just share like, you know, as much as you're comfortable about that relationship, the dynamic, and when it got to that breaking point this time, what was different?
Well, okay, so in a nutshell, this really was the turning point relationship in my life. It was the last relationship that I was able to continue that pattern that I had been following up until now. I was codependent. I was controlling. I was so wrapped up in my own insecurities, and I felt like I had to earn love, and I felt like I had to show up in a certain way to make them love me and stay with me, and all these abandonment wounds and all these things. And after I realized like I have no control over this anymore, and I'm just working overtime to control everything, not only in my life, but in his life, and everything that he does and everything he says, and, you know, just manipulating every situation to make the most sense to me that I'm comfortable with. And something that like really just hit home was the abandonment. That was the tough thing for me. Because a long time ago, you know, I lost my best friend, Julia, and you think abandonment wounds, right? And you think, oh, that's because a father figure or a mother figure left at some point. For me, it was like the sudden tragic loss of a best friend.
Yeah.
So I had this PTSD of losing people. So I was like, no, I'm not losing another person. I was like, I've invested time.
You put that control hat on.
Yes, I did.
I'm going to do something about this.
I was like, oh, no. We're not going through that again. I was like, I got this all figured out. And I just told myself, you're just never going to go through that pain again because you're never going to lose anyone again. You're not going to let it happen. But it's funny because obviously I can't do that. It's not up to me. But I just, through this whole situation, I learned so much about myself. And it wasn't really until I started going to therapy. Ooh, that's the kicker.
Now, you went to therapy while you were still in the relationship?
I did. So I started going. It was something that years ago, I was like, I had this little voice like therapy. And I was like, I don't need that. You know, I
don't need
that. I'm good. I'm like in my early 20s. I'm like, I got it all figured out.
Like, I'm
like, shh. That's my intuition talking, right? So I would ignore it. But something about this relationship, I was like, I need to get a third party opinion. Because,
am I the one who's crazy? Or
yes.
Right? I think that happened to me in relationships too, where I was like in such a traumatic, like toxic relationship, but I wanted to prove that it was them and not me.
Dude,
so I was like, if I go to therapy and this therapist
she'll
tells
tell you
me that person's the enemy, then I'm going to be like, well, now I feel better. That was such a thought process I had.
Oh my
and
gosh,
I started
that is
therapy
so
in my relationship too.
That is so funny because I was like, if I get a professional opinion, he can't argue that, you know, because I was like, am I crazy? They make you question yourself. Like the manipulation, I was like, I'm crazy. I really think I might be crazy. And I wanted to prove something too. So I go and
you're like walking in the door and be like, honey, my therapist said you're a psychopath.
She told me to tell you. That's
not how therapy works.
No, not at all. It actually, I learned so much just about myself. We dug a little bit deeper on like my upbringing, my childhood, traumas I didn't even know existed. We did breath work. We did so much deep inner healing, and she would just give me books. She would, you know, introduce me to meditation and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, what is going on here? She introduced me to crystals, like everything. Look at my apartment now. I've got crystals everywhere.
Raising the vibration.
Raising that vibration, girl. And it really got to this point where I was talking about our relationship so much that I was like, I wish you could just meet him. And she was like, bring him in.
Ooh.
So I was like, ooh, let's go.
Now, how did that conversation go with him?
I feel like any kind of dynamic where, and it's not always necessarily the female, but a lot of situations that I've experienced or heard of, it's usually, the female being like, can we go to therapy? And it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes it's vice versa. I gave that idea out and I put it out there, and he was like, I mean, shit, if that's what we got to do, like, well, at this point, we were like, let's try anything.
Anything, because you really wanted to be together. Like, you guys really did have love for each other. It wasn't 100%. Like a relationship where, like, he was out with other women.
Not
or
at all.
You were, like, trying to move across the country. Like, you guys were really aligned in, like, your friendship circles, your hobbies, the way that you feel about each other, like even your chemistry. Like, there was a lot of good things about your relationship.
It makes a good point too, because a lot of times, like, people would ask me afterwards, like, so what happened?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you answer that? It's like, no one cheated. No one really hurt each other in that way. It just got so toxic. It just got to that point where it's like, we'll take any help we can get. So
that's just like two unhealed people. And that's like why I want to do this mini series where it's like, you could be with your person. Like, I always tell like my one girlfriend, she's like going through this like breakup thing. And she is like, I thought he was the one. I thought he was my person. And I keep telling her, maybe he is. You just need to take some space to heal. And then when you're healed and he takes space to heal and you come back, you're going to be even better, And so that could be what's going on in your relationship. It's not that you're not meant to be together. You're just meant to be healed and whole to be better
and
for him.
complete within yourself. And I think the thing that I struggled with the most was, like I said, I was looking to be rescued and saved, and like, you're supposed to make me happy. And if there was something he wasn't doing to live up to my super unrealistic expectations, I was like, that needs to change ASAP. And if you don't change, then we're going to have issues, Like, it was just so... Like, I laugh about it now, but like, I just have compassion for myself back then because I didn't know better.
Right.
You can only do the best you can with the knowledge you have. Like, I didn't know any better at all.
And what's like the saying that's like, think about how hard it is to change yourself. And then we expect other people to do it like overnight.
Oh my goodness.
I want to change my like fitness routine and I want to go to the gym every single day this week. And then you go twice.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right. And that's
but then you ask your partner to like start telling you compliments every day and they don't do it for 3 days. And you're like, well, you failed.
Or better yet, you ask them to give you love that they can't even give themselves.
They don't even know what it means.
They don't even know what it means. They don't know how to love. That's something I realized, like, major from this is that people can only love you at the depth that they love themselves. Oof. If they don't even know who the fuck they are, how to love themselves, how are they going to love you? Yeah, they don't even know. Or they're in this career or this life. They're going down this path. They're not following what they really care about. They're not following their dreams. They're not living out their purpose, Like, that is going to ultimately lead to them being unhappy, them being in misalignment, them being, like, just not in the place that they really truly want to be with their higher self. Like,
their cup's not full.
It's not full.
Let alone running over.
Oh my gosh. And then I'm over here with my cup barely filled, and I don't know how to fill it myself either.
But you want them to fill your cup.
I'm like, fill it up.
Even if you're empty, fill me
fill
up.
Fill up mine, like every last drop. But it just like, the unrealistic expectation things was something I really had to forgive myself for because, like I said, I didn't know any better, and I just wanted to be happy because I was like, I deserve this. And it's not that I was wrong. I do deserve this. You deserve this. Everyone does. But it was something I put in the matter of someone else's hands.
Yeah.
I didn't do it myself first. I didn't know how.
Oh, that's
I didn't know how.
So you go to this therapy session with him.
Okay, so we're going back to the therapy.
Yeah, I'm like so curious because I don't know if I ever really heard this story either.
Gotcha.
So I remember you saying that you guys went. Mm-hmm. And how did that first session go?
So it actually, it went well.
Did it give you hope? Like you left feeling like, okay, we're on the right path?
It did because it was something I think some people really struggle with. Because here's the issue. We were both in past relationships and they were both toxic. Mm-hmm. And then we came together and we just brought that baggage with us, right? So he has this image and this story that he tells himself about women. And I have this story that I tell myself about men. So anytime I wanted to communicate, he thought it would be a fight or something like that. So he never felt safe to express himself. I never felt safe to express myself. So that therapy session was like that chance to really let that out. And it was kind of overwhelming at first because I was like, wow, you have a lot that you could say,
Yep.
And it was great. It was, she sent us home with like some homework, and this was like the last straw. Like this was my last effort. I was like, we're going to do this. And we both seemed really committed at the time. And I did that homework quicker, faster, more dedicated than I've ever done a homework assignment in my life.
Yep.
Like I put all my eggs in this basket. Like it was the last thing. It was like,
yeah,
it was the most important thing.
Now or never.
Now or never. This is it. And so, over time, everything starts to show up over time, how it really is. And I was putting a lot of my effort into that, and it wasn't being reciprocated. And I look back now and I understand why. It's the same thing. He didn't have the love for himself, so how could he put that time and love and effort into us?
Yeah.
How?
And he didn't realize like the reward it would bring.
No.
So he didn't make it a priority.
Absolutely not.
You can't fault someone for that, but when
No.
you're in it, like when you're in that relationship with them, you just want to scream, why?
Oh
Don't
my
you
gosh.
love me?
That had such an effect on my self-worth. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that is such a huge part of it, because I was like, if you love me, you will work on this and you'll do whatever it takes, because I'll do that for you.
Yeah.
But it was such a mind fuck, because it's not that he didn't love me. It's just that he didn't love himself. Like, it literally had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And I took it
Bizarre.
so personal. I took everything personal. The not doing the work, the not making me happy, the this and that. Like, I took it such a personal attack, and it had nothing to do with me.
And it's hard not
Nothing.
to, because I think so many of our relationships break that down.
Right.
Like, you could be the most confident person in high school, and then you get into your first relationship, second relationship, by the third relationship, you've heard the same story.
Yep.
You're lazy, you don't care, you're this, you're that, you're unmotivated,
Yes.
you don't make enough money, like whatever the story is, I think it like
Right.
repeats in relationships. Like I had every boyfriend kind of like tell me the same thing, because I was attracting the same kind of person.
Oh my gosh,
I always dated guys that like were drug dealers or
Yep.
had like
I went through that whole phase too.
Were bouncing from job to job. They didn't quite know who they were, and I was like, I'm gonna save them, right? Oh my gosh, like I have it all figured out. I have a bachelor in psychology.
Speaking to my soul.
I have love in my heart, and like they're gonna be a new man.
Yep.
But because they were the same person in different bodies, I was getting the same story told to me over and over. And then by the time I got to like the relationship that was probably the best relationship for me, I was all fucked up. Like I was like self-confident, like I didn't have self-confidence.
Right.
I was insecure. I was insecure about my body. And I was like wanting that person to break all the things that someone else had told me.
Right.
And that's not fair,
Right.
And that was like the biggest thing, where it's like we have these stories we tell ourselves, and
Yes.
we forget that our partner has the same stories that they've been told by all their past partners.
And if you don't heal that and not bring that into the next relationship, all you're going to do, like you said, and I say that all the time, is you're only going to keep attracting the same person in a different body. And I've been doing that, and I'm like, why? Why do I keep attracting the same person? And that's why this relationship was the last one. I was like, you know what? I want to become, this is an exercise that my therapist had me do actually, and it was really powerful. Writing down all the characteristics, all the things you look for in a partner, the security, the trust, the love, the this and the that. And then rewriting it and giving it to yourself and being like, how can I do this for myself, instead of looking for it in someone else? Instead of putting all that in someone else's hands, you do it for yourself first. And then you'll meet someone that matches that level of self-love and care and trust and all that stuff. They'll meet you there, but you have to be there vibrationally, and then you will attract it. Yeah,
exactly. That's like such a good point. So you guys went to therapy, then you kind of decided it was time to like separate ways. And then I remember from an outside perspective, because this isn't something you like bring up with your girlfriends. Like when I would see you out, I was like, yay, Tara's out. We're going to have the best time. We're not going to like go in the bathroom and have a 2-hour conversation.
Right, because it was consuming my life already.
And you were trying to like move forward, but there was like this part of you that would go home every night and be like, oh, I miss him. I'll just call him up real quick. It's not a big deal. Tomorrow I'll go back to like living my own life. So can you kind of talk about that like cycle of like,
oh yeah,
you were broken up, but like still seeing each other, still like bumping into each other, like why and how, and like what was going through your mind at the time? Not necessarily now, Tara, but like at the time.
Got you.
how did that feel? Like, you miss him, and then you get this little hit of dopamine, like, ooh, we saw each other, things are good, maybe this changed. Like, how did that look at the time for anyone that's, like, going through this right now? Like, and maybe they're not recognizing that they're going through that pattern because they're like, everything's fine, I got it under control. Like,
it's under control.
I have my girlfriend, I got my job, and I'll just see him whenever I want, and I can handle it.
Oh, the I can handle it thing. I have this under control. That's how I felt too. There was a lot of factors that played into it. You know, like you said, we cross each other's paths all the time. Same friend group, everything. Which is common. Like, most people that live in small towns, most people that work together. You might have met through that friend group, you know? Like, how are you going to deal with... That's why it's so difficult, because it's not just the relationship. It's the friends, the same social settings, like everything. At the time, it really was just an honest addiction. It was an addiction. Like, the dopamine that you were saying, it's like, I needed that fix. I would go a certain amount of time and I'd be like, okay, I need it. I'm going to reward myself because I've gone 2 weeks without talking to him. But what I didn't know at the time was that I was just sabotaging myself because I didn't feel like I was worthy enough of feeling good all the time. I needed that chaos, the drama, the whiplash, the fighting, the toxicity. I was so used to it. Like I said, I've been in that kind of relationship since I was 16, 17 years old. So at that time, I craved it. Yeah. I was like, I need this. This is too peaceful for me right now. Like, you know, like. Was there a part of you that felt like if you could get him riled up, it would show how much he cared about you? Sometimes I would look for a reaction. I would try and see, like, you know, if he cares, then if he sees my Instagram post where I look so sexy and there's another guy in there. Oh my gosh. I would check my story. I would be like, did he look at my story? It's like this unhealthiness of like, obsessively checking things and making sure that like they're still looking at your stuff and do they care? Do they still care? Like, he's still looking. Okay, it's like that validation. It's that external validation that gives you that dopamine hit. Like, that's the best way to describe it. And it was an addiction. Yeah. It really was. But if I had to say, like, to someone that's going through that right now and to my former self, I would say, you just have to think about something that you can do. Small goals, honestly, small goals. Because I'm not kidding you, it wasn't until I came up with this small goal of mine, I said, I'm going to reward myself. And this is what I had to do at the time. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. But I was like, I'm going to reward myself. The next 10 times that I run into him, I'm going to keep track. And we're not going to let it turn into a conversation after. We're not going to let it turn into that's how, like, I had to break this down into a goal. Yeah, okay? No, that's really good. No, but I love that. Because I tried everything else, it didn't work. And I got to 10 times and I treated myself to a nice dinner. Ooh. Like, I was like, okay. And I rewarded myself and that was the end of it. Like, that is what worked. So if I have to, like, give advice to someone that's going through that right now, it may seem silly, but whatever you have to do, block them. Blocking, I will never think is petty ever again. I used to think it was petty. Me too. And now I'm like, no. It's for my sanity. It's for me. Not to send you a message. Right. I could care less what you think about it. I don't give a shit. If you take that some sort of way, that's your problem. That's your perception. But I'm going to do whatever I have to do to move on. And if nothing else has worked, I got to try something new. Yeah. Because if you try the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, that's literally the definition of insanity. Yeah. Like, it's not going to happen. And then, like, the thing is, too, like, now being, like, very into our spirituality and connected to our intuition and realizing energy, everything is energy. So even if they're looking at your Instagram post, they're not talking to you, they're not reaching out, but they're still energetically coming into your bubble. They're still energetically, like, thinking of you, right? Like, how many times do you think of your girlfriend and, like, 5 minutes later they call you? Or text you and it's like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking of you. Especially when you have a romantic bond with somebody, you have this connectivity on an energetic level. So even though you're out living your life, if they're still following you, they're still watching you, they're energetically impacting your bubble. Yep. And you're subconsciously picking up these things. And so the blocking thing is kind of just like, you know, and I always say to girls too, like, it doesn't have to be permanent. You know what I mean? Right. Where it's like, you're not killing them. Like, that's how it feels though, right? When you hit that block button, you feel like you're literally axing them off the earth, like kicking you to hell. Like, bye, you're so dead. Funny. But they're not dead. You know? It's just saying, like, I am taking an energetic break from you. Yes. Think of it that way, and then I think it's like easier to take that step and hit the button. I was gonna say, adding on top of that too, it's a very good point because you do feel like it's the end, you know. But something to keep in mind is like kind of piggybacking on all of this is do what you have to do right now. It's just for right now until you can get to that next step where you trust yourself a little more and a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more to the point where it's not even a fucking thing anymore.
Right.
And you're good. And then you can see them out and be like, hey, dude, how are you? Like, you can't like expect yourself to be at that point right off the bat. You can't expect it to happen overnight. Like, you have to do the things and take the steps as painful as it is. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Do you, like, what would you rather? The pain of taking that little small step to get you towards the bigger goal, or the pain of going through the same cycle fucking over and over and over, and that whiplash every time you get back in that cycle, and then you have to break it again, and then back in the cycle and break it again. Do you know the pain and the suffering? Like, why? It's just, what would you rather?
Exactly. And that's like the whole point of like this whole mini series of heartbreak to heal, right? So it's like, I'm not saying break up and never go back to them. It's like break up to heal yourself.
Take a break.
And then, take that break, heartbreak, break it up, heal yourself. And then when you see them on the street, you might not even be attracted to them anymore. You might be like, oh, wow, I really didn't notice how unhealed you are. I didn't notice the traumas that you were bringing in. Now I notice because I'm healed and we're no longer on the same vibration. We can't even align if we wanted to.
That's a good point.
You know?
That is a good point too, because something I noticed is after I kind of got out of the clouds, I stepped back. I was able to put on like my lenses were clear. I got to see a lot clearer. And then the run-ins and the conversations and the catching up, like, didn't even feel the same. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I missed this. It was kind of like, I see this for what it is now because I took that time to take a step back. You can't see clear when you're in the middle of a cloud.
No, not at all.
You can't.
So my other question, which I'm super curious about, because I know this was all like unfolding towards like the end of 2019 into 2020.
Yeah.
How did quarantine go? Because
I know that
quarantine either like brought people together, it broke people up, or it just created like more of a messy situation because people were desperate for any attention, and it's not like you could go out to the club and meet somebody new. So what do? We circle back around, we get on the phone, and we're like, who is most likely to text me back right now?
Yeah, I will say it just got us into another cycle because it was a lonely time. I live alone, and it was one of those things where I was like, well, shit, I don't know how long this is gonna last. Like the whole quarantine thing, first of all, it lasted way longer than any of us planned or thought it would, but it was a very lonely time, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll just deal with this now. I've done this. I've done this. I can handle this. I'm gaining from.
Why is that such a lie we tell ourselves? I can handle it.
I can handle this. And you lied. I lied to myself so bad. I was like, no, I'm getting, what I want too. It's not just him.
Yeah.
I get to hang out with him and then go home and not, and it's just like such a lie because like we still crave that same love. So it was, quarantine was a mess, but it was a beautiful mess because after that it was like, all right, no more. Because as soon as the first bars opened back up again, reality hit us back in the face and we were back to our bullshit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, quarantine, you got me. You got me good. And I fell for it.
Oh, it's so true. So I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about the when you're breaking up with someone, you're breaking up with like the friendship circle and that whole thing, because that really applied to your situation. Like living in downtown Tampa, it's a small social circle. There's only so many bars and clubs. I know people think like, oh, you live in a big city. Nah, the same people hang with the same people. So how was that process for you? Because that's never easy either.
Honestly, I gotta say that was probably one of the hardest parts because I was like, what am I going to do? I have no one else, quote unquote. That was the story I told myself. And I have known these people for 5 or 6 years. It was the same group I'd hung out with for a long time. So I was like, what am I going to do? And I had this whole ego trip where I was like, no, I'm going to hang out with them. You need to respect my time these are my friends too. And it just like, it bit me in the ass because there was times where we were both there and then, that would slip into a cycle and things like that. And I just realized, maybe this isn't serving me anymore. Maybe these people are not a part of my next chapter. Maybe they're not supposed to come with me. And so aside from, him being there and all of that, it was its own separate thing. I was just realizing like, okay, like these people served their purpose in my life. It's been it's been a good time. Like it's been real, but it's time to move forward. And I knew in my heart that there was no way I could truly like move on from this whole thing holding on to that whole friend group. There's just no way. Like whoever was meant to stay in my life will stay in my life. I'm not going to chase anybody down or beg people to stay in my life or, I'm not going to do that. I've learned that if someone's meant to be in my life, they will be. And I've met so many amazing people.
Yes.
It got me so out of my comfort zone. Like, I would suggest if anyone's feeling like stuck in their friend group because of a relationship or a past relationship, take that leap because there are so many amazing people and those friendships that you're looking for exist.
Yeah. And
they fucking do.
That's huge because I know that when you get out of that relationship, you feel so lonely because you don't have that person to cuddle with. You don't have that person to like vent to. You just don't have that person. And then when you're leaving the friendship group, you feel like the depths of alone. Yeah. And you're just like, I'm never going to have friends again. Like you're just in this really like down and out space. But I feel like if you open your heart to other people and other opportunities and other friendship circles, they will show up. And that was like a big thing for me. That's how we met. Like all my girlfriends that I have today are like soul friends, like literally soul sisters. But I did not meet them until like 2 weeks after my husband said he wanted a divorce.
Isn't that funny how that works?
It's bizarre. And you know what? I have to be honest, like there were many, many days. He worked like 12-hour days and I only worked a couple days a week. So I would sit at home alone a lot.
And like wait for him.
Yeah, wait for him. Like, wait for him to walk through the door. And I like had this like housewifey like role where I was like, I'll clean and I'll cook and I'll do all the things. And he really imprinted that on me because he felt like he looked successful as a man if I didn't have to work. But that left me really lonely.
Story.
And so I didn't have any good girlfriends. I didn't have the opportunity to meet anyone because at the end of the day, I was waiting for him to walk through the door. And I remember one day sitting on my couch being like, I pray, universe, to send me some girlfriends. Like, I want a good girlfriend, just one or maybe two.
Oh, my
That's
heart.
all I wanted. Right. And now, like a year and a half after all that happened and we broke up, like I have the most like intricate, diverse group of women that I connect with on all different levels.
Yeah.
But when I heard that news from him, I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to be friends with any of his friends. I don't even want to talk to the people that we used to be friends with together because now I feel embarrassed.
Right.
And I was like, what am I going to do? And there was like this 2-3 week space where I spent a lot of alone time and going to therapy.
Oh man, relatable.
And working on myself. But then people just started flooding in. I mean, my birthday was 4 weeks after I found out. And these girls showed up at my birthday party and we wilded out. And
That's
like,
so much fun.
It's like what I needed, but I didn't know any of them.
Right.
4 weeks prior, I didn't know any of you.
Right.
So, I know that feeling, that hopeless, like,
yes.
Like,
what am I going to do? For real.
But it will happen because what's like the saying, like you clear space for one thing, like you clear the runway and the plane can land.
I was just going to say, I think it's no coincidence that short of time afterwards, all these amazing people came into your life. The same thing. It was like, there was that rough period, right? Where you're like, oh my God, like I have fucking nobody. Like, what am I going to do? And you have like those close friends, like that few that you obviously have all along. But when you start to make room and you get rid of the people that no longer serve you anymore, you start opening up this space for people to come in, and it's almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's a little overwhelming because I look around now and I'm like, who the fuck are all you people?
Yeah.
I'm like, I had no idea like a year ago that you all existed. Yeah. I had no idea because I was so wrapped up in these other people, wrapped up in my cycle of a relationship, if you want to call it a relationship. It was a shit show. It was a shit show. And I,
Isn't it sad to look back at our relationships and like, wow. And it's like,
oh my
I
gosh.
think we've talked about this before. Like when I say shit show, I don't mean that he was a shit show. I'm saying that we together.
Oh yeah. No, I took full responsibility. I was a psycho girl.
Me too. Because I was not healed.
Right.
And now this healed version of myself, if I was in that spot again, I know that I wouldn't react the same way.
Oh, 100%.
I wouldn't communicate the same way. I would be more patient.
We wouldn't have stayed as long.
No, I would definitely
if you
not
think about it.
Not at all. I would have been able to be like, all right, like you just don't get me.
All those red flags.
Yeah,
ooh, boy.
Like you just don't get me, and that's okay.
Right. And I think something also too, just touching on the term psycho, like I say that jokingly because I'm like, that's probably what people say that, were around me at the time or what he portrayed. And that was something I really fucking struggled with because I was like, no, they have to know that I wasn't that. I wasn't psycho. There was so much manipulation. There was so much, and I felt like I needed everyone to know my side. Mm-hmm. And that is something I really had to let go of, is needing to tell my side. Because I was like, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks of you. It doesn't matter what their perception of you is. It doesn't matter because you know how that fucking went down. That's all that matters.
Right. That you can tell yourself the truth. Because I think that's the big thing. Amen. When you're in the relationship, we're telling ourselves these lies. I can handle it. It's not that bad. If I just give him more love, he'll give me more love. If we just go to therapy, like we tell ourselves all these lies. And there comes a point, I think, that we have to be totally honest.
Brutally.
With ourselves. We don't need to tell anyone else. We don't need to explain it to mama. We don't need to explain it to our best friend. But like looking in the mirror and being like, I did this and they did that. Kind of like that bird's eye view where you're like writing the novel from the third person perspective and saying, okay, well, they came home from work, didn't give me attention, so I lashed out because I expected them to run in the door with arms wide open, like, baby, we're
and they didn't. I was triggered.
I triggered myself, so I started getting
snotty.
I got snotty, and they were like, had a hard day at work, and now I'm being snotty, so now they're triggered at me, and so they walk into the other room, and now I feel abandoned because, and it's like you see the whole cycle play out, and then when you can be honest about that, you can be like, oh, okay, neither one of us were psycho. No. We were both so freaking triggered that we lost our minds.
And traumatized. Like, the thing is that we all, I won't even say we all, I'll say just from my own past experiences, and you might be able to relate to this too, it's like all that chaos is just projection. Projection on top of projection and it just piles until you're like, what the fuck are we fighting about anymore?
Oh my God.
And then you have to get down to the root of it. And that's what we tried to do in therapy. But to get to that point, we were like 3 years in at this point, and we had been projecting at each other for that long. Yeah. To try to unravel all of that. Like, it was just so much work. Not to say it can't be done, but like you said, now if I ever, when I enter a relationship, I'm going to own up to the times that I got triggered. That's how you grow. You say, that triggered me. I don't really know why. Yeah. I'm going to explore that. Yeah. I'm going to meditate on that. I'm going to journal about it, something.
I'll get back to you.
About that. Like, it's going to happen, but I think that's the beautiful part of growing with somebody is that you can sit there and own up to that. You can take responsibility for, shit, I just came off a totally different way. I didn't mean to do that. Or that triggered me. Whoa, why did that trigger me? Let me explore that, Yeah. That's like the beautiful thing. I think it's a mess when you guys are, your egos just are battling each other the whole time.
And then you don't want to let anything go. So after 3 years, it's like one argument lasts 5 hours. And by the 5th hour of the argument, you have touched on everything that happened in the last 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
But you still haven't let any of it go. You just talked about it again.
Well, that's another thing, too, is that when you're not working on yourself, like, let's put it this way, like, the feminine, masculine energy, right? So the whole thing with masculine energy is, like, the groundedness, the security, the safety, the a safe space, the strength. That was not in my relationship at all. So I had to step into my own masculine and kind of make up for the lack of his healthy masculine. And now we're just two masculine energies just repelling each other.
And that's so common. I think I see it like, think about like how many relationships we see either on TV or even in like our, older relationships, like our parents' generation. Yeah. We see women that are really like, I don't want to say like belittling to their husbands, but
submissive.
Or not submissive, like the opposite. How many women like kind of treat their husbands like shit? Like, you have to buy me this or do this or did you pick up the kids? Like, and always nagging, that nagging, where it's like a feminine in a relationship is so like in her masculine and she's like belittling her husband.
It's like a toxic masculinity. Well, and when you have a trauma bond, which is what I would consider pretty much all my relationships, especially the last one, there are no boundaries. There's no boundaries. That's why the cycle kept continuing, because neither one of us had the self-love and the boundaries for ourselves and respect for ourselves or for each other too. It's like, you got to respect each other's boundaries and really try to not do this to each other anymore. If you really love each other, why the fuck are you doing this?
I know.
Like, that boundary is so important. And I didn't even know what a boundary was up until probably like a year ago.
I think it's a very confusing concept.
I think so.
Because there's that fine line of like bossy and boundary.
Yeah, like am I being a bitch by saying no? Am I being too stern? It's like, you can change that at any time. You don't have to be the submissive yes woman or yes man all the time. Like, if you can't set a boundary and it be respected, like there's something going wrong here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think it's like, it comes down to like having the communication tools
Right.
to express to someone. So like in my now relationship, which is still a work in progress, but
Right.
I feel like I behave 180 from what I did in my marriage. And that's because I now have the tools to communicate it to him. So he was like very unhealed when I met him, like very like, just like me, just like you, like relationship to relationship to relationship. So I had to respect his process of like, he's not healed, but I want to be with him. So I have two choices. Either I can break up and let him heal on his own, which God knows I could take 10 years, or I could have patience and guide him through the healing journey without doing his work.
Without fixing.
Yeah,
Correct.
without fixing or doing his work. And so now it's those communication about boundaries. Like in the past, I would be like, I don't want to go. And that's it.
You wouldn't, I mean,
like, because I don't want to go. Like, I don't like the people, or I don't feel good, or I don't want to go. But now when I like say I don't want to go, it's like, I'm just feeling this kind of way today. It's really unusual that I don't want to be social, but something's going on with me. I don't know what it is, but I really don't want to go, and I'm not going to go. But you can go, and I'm not going to be upset if you go.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to feel like I'm missing out. I'm not going to feel like any type of way. If you want to go, please go. The choice is yours.
The delivery is so
But
different.
I couldn't have done that when I was like in this toxic mess up.
I can't.
I wouldn't even have wanted to say that to
No,
somebody
because you're like, you don't deserve that.
Right, exactly.
It's a mess.
Freaking ego.
It's a mess. But I think that's the crucial part about taking that time to be alone, because for me, it's like you can't really I didn't uncover a lot of these things about myself until I really sat in my shit and felt it. And I was like, you know what? I need to feel this. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep doing the same shit. I'm going to attract the same thing into my life.
Yeah.
And I just reached the point.
Now, here's another good question. So you were saying like at the beginning that everyone's a mirror, right? So like when you have these unhealed traumas, you're most likely going to attract someone who also has like that. So like if you're really masculine, you'll find someone who's masculine. Or if you have like a toxic trait, like I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Like you have an unhealed wound about abandonment. You're going to find someone that also has like that abandonment wound, because you kind of like mesh and get each other on the soul level, but on like an ego level, it's like blah, 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 back and forth. Do you feel like in your friendship circle back then, not necessarily now because you're more healed, you had a lot of girlfriends that were also going through toxic relationships, which helped you justify your toxic relationship?
You're speaking to my soul.
Because I feel like that's what happens. I'm like, oh, my girlfriend's relationship isn't perfect either. Or her boyfriend did this and my boyfriend doesn't do that bad of things. Like he cheats on her, but my boyfriend doesn't. So
that's okay.
That's okay. But we attract friends who complain about their boyfriends, that don't don't have boundaries either. Like, it just kind of happens, and now you're in a social circle where you're like, well, I'm not the worst.
Who's the lesser of evils here,
in this relationship?
I think you make a great point, and that really does resonate so heavily, because I remember talking about this in therapy, and it was one of those things where, there was other relationships in that friend group that were going through the same bullshit toxic cycle too, and they still are, and and it's like, I think back to that friend circle, and I'm like, are there any relationships that I like really like look up to? No. And that's not even an insult. Like, it just truly is not anything that I like really wanted. Like, how do you think you're going to be that one couple that's healthy in that situation?
Oh yeah.
I was talking about, some of my girlfriends and just like the situations in my life at the time in therapy, and my therapist literally asked me straight up, she's like, are you and that girlfriend, like, are you guys just like, is this a healthy bond or is this a trauma bond in your friendship?
Yeah.
Because we were enabling each other to continue these toxic cycles because we were going through the same thing.
And you felt like when you talked to each other, you vented.
It was normal.
You felt good for a moment.
Yes.
Like, okay, I'm not the only one, and I got it out of my system. Now I'm good.
Oh my gosh. And it really is. You look around and you're like, well, at least I'm not doing that. And you start comparing yourself, and it's like, you don't mean to, but you want to justify your situation in any way you can.
Oh, yeah.
You want to know that it's okay, this is normal, other people are doing this, but then you step out of that and you get away from it all, and you realize that, like, that's not really how it goes.
Yeah, and I think that's like a really good point, because if you're listening to this and you're in that situation where, like I said, you got out of a relationship, you're in a toxic relationship, like, and you're calling your girlfriends every day to vent, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you need that. You need a good girlfriend that you can like lean on and cry to. And like, I've done that for a lot of my girlfriends, but there gets a point where it's like, I need to be talking to a therapist and not my girlfriend every single day, because
I'm just dumping on her. She can't really give me any more advice than she's already given me in the last 6 months because she's only at the space that she can give,
right.
you know? And
right.
so I need to take that energy of venting every day, call this girlfriend, then hang up with her, then call this girlfriend, talk to her for an hour and hang up with her. It's like, I need to go talk to a therapist. Like
a professional.
For me.
For
to
you.
help me.
Yeah.
And so I hope, like, if you're listening, like, that is, like, the one thing that you take away from this, because I know I remember this one time. I was in a relationship with this guy, drug dealer, and he would smoke pot behind my back, and I would get so mad. And instead of just leaving, I would bitch and bitch and bitch and get mad and fight with him. And he's like, he's not going to stop smoking pot, okay?
Yeah, like take it for what it is.
He's not going to. So either you get over it and deal with it, or you leave because it's not aligned with who you were.
Right.
So I went to a therapist after the relationship ended. He ended up moving away. Like, that's how,
Bye.
like, that's the only way it ended, is because he decided to move and I was in school and I could not move. Like, that's
like divine intervention right there.
Divine intervention, because I couldn't let go.
Right.
So I went to a therapist after, and I remember sitting in her office and telling her why I was there. And, you know, after the second session, she goes, "Why are you here?" I remember it like clear as day. And I go, because I like want to like fix myself.
You're like, I like need like
she's
help.
She's like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, that relationship is over. Like, you're moving on. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, long story short, I still kept going to therapy, not with her,
yeah, of
but I
course.
found someone more aligned with me. But now I feel like it's an ongoing thing. And now I think about it like, do I really need to call my girlfriends every single day and bitch? Like, once in a while, hell yeah. Like, please just listen to me because I need to get it out. But like,
right.
I find that the best downloads and the most insight I can get is through someone who is professionally dealing with this and with other people. Yes. An outside perspective.
I completely hear you, because that's another thing too. Like you said, your friends are great to have, and it's great to have that, you know, stability to lean on in times that you need a friend to call. But, you know, it's like they can only give you as much knowledge as they have. You know what I mean? So it's like, if they're in the same kind of toxic cycle, what kind of advice are you receiving?
Yeah.
Is it enabling? You don't even know at the time because you're just taking whatever you can get.
Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, my therapist, like, I was going once a week at a certain point. Like, I was like, and then after every session, I was like, no, I'm coming next week. Like, I'm coming back. And now I still feel it's a doctor. It's a mental health doctor. You think about it this way. It's like, you go get checkups, right? You go get your teeth cleaned. You go do this. You go do that. You go to the gym every now and then or on a frequent basis. Why not go check your mental health on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Why not? Like, why is it treated any differently? I think the connotation and this like stigma around therapy, it's like, I feel like now that I've built this relationship with my therapist, I fucking love her. Like, her and I, like, like you said, you have to find the one you resonate with and that you align with. But I talk about her all the time. Like, she's my friend. I go in, I feel like I'm talking to one of my girlfriends.
Yep.
I don't feel like I'm like being a different way or changing anything or anything like that. I'm like truly being myself, and I receive everything that she tells me.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm like, why doesn't everyone fucking do this? It's amazing.
And I think that was probably one of the biggest tools in your toolbox. So when we talk about like the Heartbreak to Heal toolbox, right? So you have your therapist. That's a big tool in your toolbox. What other like tools did you have? I know the gym for you is like a big tool in your toolbox, like getting out of your body and out of your head and just getting to the gym and doing things.
Yeah.
What other things could you give like advice? I mean, from small little things to obviously big things like therapy.
I would say like things that I could do at home. I mean, I did start reading.
That's a good one.
I would say reading and podcasts, like that for me, that was amazing because it was things that you could listen to and read that made you realize, wow, I wasn't fucking crazy. I was just going through this or this, and that's what that was. And you start uncovering these things and you're like, wow, this makes so much sense. So that was huge for me. And I mean, look at I have so many books around my apartment now. I was never a book girl. I never was. I was like, I hate reading. It's boring. I don't find the time. And now I'm like, I'm on to my next book. Like, I love it. I will say spending like stillness, like moments in stillness with yourself. It's uncomfortable at first, and I never understood in the beginning, like, what was the benefit? Like, what's the point of this? This seems counterproductive. I don't get it.
It's so hard with our cell phone attached to our hand.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard.
Even though you're alone, you're not alone if your phone is in your hand.
You're not alone, and, you know, it gets to that resistant point where you're sitting there for, I don't know, a few moments, and you're like, okay, that's enough. But that's the moment where, like, you got to push past, because there's going to be something that comes through to you that wouldn't have the access to you if you didn't sit in that stillness.
Yep.
There's been so many times that I've had things come through to me just sitting in stillness, whether I'm literally just sitting there meditating or stretching. I would say stretching is like so meditative, like taking a walk, going outside, like doing things outdoors, not just workouts in the gym, but going for a bike ride, taking a walk, doing something outside, like just getting in Mother Nature. Like, I cannot explain how fulfilling that is. Like, it's just a beautiful feeling.
I'm glad you brought up that point. Like, walking, stretching, getting into nature, like these
Moving.
are all things that like fill up our soul and then like help our bodies be like super prime. So like I had this conversation with another girlfriend who really wanted to make this relationship work, like so bad that she was like giving up her gym time. She was giving up like, you know, everything that really she needed for self-care just to make this relationship work. Oof. And I was like, girlfriend, let's just imagine this all works out. And everything pans out like you want. And he wants to go on vacations and he wants to travel and he wants to do all these things, but you're not even physically capable of going to Rome and walking all day long because you're not even going for a walk every day around your house.
Right.
And so like you have to show up for yourself, but also for that future relationship. You know, like imagine in your mind that ultimate relationship. What does it look like? What are you guys doing? What activities are you doing together?
Write it down.
And start being that.
Yes.
Now, right?
Yes.
That's like a huge thing. So I love that you said like the body and the physical care.
And I think too, it's like the exercise I said my therapist had me do earlier. It's, you know, write down all the things that you look for in another person. And do you even have that? Would you be with you? You know,
yes,
like would you date you? If
yes.
you can't say yes, then how the fuck do you expect someone else to choose you or to put you first? You know, like it's just not going to happen. Like, you come first. If everyone around you were to drop dead, you're stuck with you.
Yeah.
So you better like either, you know, befriend yourself, like get to love yourself a little bit, accept yourself. There's quirky ways of you and like unique things about you that are seriously like
awesome.
They're just it's awesome.
You make such a good point. Like, would you date yourself? Like, if you have $500 in your bank account and you met a guy and you just started falling for him and then you found out that he is living paycheck to paycheck, would you be attracted to it?
Right.
Some people say yes, it doesn't matter to them. Okay, that's fine. Like, perfect, great.
Good for you.
But if it does matter to you and you're looking at your own bank account, you need to get your bank account up. That's what you need to be focusing
100%.
on right now. Like, get to the point where you are what you're trying to attract, right?
Become that. Yeah, because if you want to be, you know, attracting that higher vibration person or the person that is in touch with their feelings and they're, you know, working on themselves and they're doing the things that you do to heal. Like, the only way to do that is to meet them at that level and do the same thing. Like, you're not going to meet someone on that same level unless they're doing the exact same things as you. And it's not the exact same things. It's just they want to grow. They want to heal. They want to get better. They want to change and work on their traumas and go down that road. Like, you can't force anyone. This was huge for me. You cannot force anyone to want to change or to want to work on themselves. Like, if they don't simply want to do it on their own, don't try to change them.
Yeah.
Don't try to change them.
Timing.
That was the hardest thing for me to accept because I was, like I said, I was like, why? If you love me, why? But it had nothing to do with me.
Oh, that's so good. I just love, like, you just touched on so many things. And I feel like even when I go through things, like, you're just able to speak such truth because you're so grounded in your own. And that only comes from being alone and taking the time and the space. And I'm sure, you know, you'll get into your next relationship whenever time comes up and you're going to have things come up, things that you didn't realize you needed to work on. And that's really normal, you know, and if you are someone who's in a relationship and you just want it to be better and you don't want to leave, maybe you have kids with this person or maybe, you know, you really know that this is your person, but you're going through like a rough patch, know that you can still work on yourself and that might inspire them, but don't force them. Like, you can't expect them to be exactly where you are when you're there.
Amen. And I think a good point too is like, you know, no matter the history you have or the place that you're in or how long you've been together, there is that voice that when you do honor that and you hear that voice, we all know what voice I'm talking about, and that's your intuition. And that voice gets louder and louder and louder and louder the more you listen to it because you just start to recognize it more. And you can't ignore it at a certain point. And you already know deep down what to do. You already know. And we look for these answers outside of ourselves, and we're like, what do I need to do? You ask your girlfriends, you ask your therapist, you ask your anyone and everyone, your parents.
You Google it.
You Google it.
Is he toxic?
And it's like, you take a quiz.
Yeah, take another quiz.
Are we meant
where's
to
my
be?
Cosmo from 20, where's my Cosmo?
What time were you born? I need to know.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing, right? We're like, ask the universe, like, give me a sign I'm supposed to break up with him. Oh my
gosh,
and then the universe gives you a sign, and you're like, no.
You're like, not that sign, though.
No, well, I couldn't really interpret that.
You know exactly what to do. It's just a matter of hitting your breaking point, and it's a matter of give yourself grace too, because no matter where you're at, like I said, in the process and in the situation, whether you're single, broken up with someone, or whatever the case may be, like, listen to that voice, because if you feel like there is better out there for you, there probably is.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
And whether that's friendship-wise or relationship-wise, like, it's out there.
Yeah. And healing, heartbreak to heal, like, it's a continual journey.
Right.
You're going to go through it your whole life, but I think the biggest changing point from focusing on what is a relationship going to give me to how can I give it to myself.
To myself.
And not
you gotta
expect
show
the
up
other
that
person
way.
to do it for you, And also when that person is expecting things of you, being able to recognize that, like, hey, you're needing me to call you every 2 hours because you have a trauma bond.
Right.
I don't need to call you every 2 hours. You're not my dad.
Right.
You're
Boundary.
not my boss. Like,
yeah.
So recognizing is like such a healthy thing too for relationships.
Communication, all those things in the relationship, but outside of it, like whether it's a breakup or, you're about to break up with somebody or you just got broken up with, don't be afraid to spend time alone.
Yeah. Like,
that used to be the biggest thing I was afraid of, like biggest fear ever. And now it's like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Is spend time alone.
And do you feel like now you have such a different criteria for your next relationship? Like, yeah. I guess the first question is, do you feel like you'd ever get back with your ex?
No. Okay. Respectfully.
And that was like a really quick no, so that's really good.
Well,
and no judgment. What I mean? Like I said, a lot of people heal and then go, wow, like.
I just know that it served its purpose in my life, and he was a huge lesson for me, and I'll take that for what it is. Like, no hard feelings, love him as a human, and I will always care for him. If he ever really needed me, I would help him.
With boundaries.
With boundaries. Right. I would. Absolutely. With boundaries. Amen, sister. But, moving forward, I do have different criteria. It's not even criteria. It's just standards.
Yeah.
I don't put up with the bullshit. I see things a lot clearer now, the red flags, like in my dating life and stuff. Like, I've tried to go on dates and things, and like, a guy will last 3 days before I notice a red flag, and I'm like, nope. Like, it just, I don't have the tolerance for bullshit anymore. And I love that because I'm just getting to where I want to go,
Yeah. Oh my
I'll
gosh.
get there.
I love that. So thank you so much again for being so open
you.
and honest. I want to kind of close this with 60 seconds advice you would give to a girl that's sitting on her couch, heartbroken, feeling hopeless. Like, if you could do it in 60 seconds.
I would say that what you're feeling right now is temporary. It's not going to feel this way forever. It's always the hardest in the beginning, but every single day, get up, do what you need to do. Whether doing your best that day looks like getting out of bed or crushing your day, just get through your day. It always gets better. Everything's happening for a reason. I would say just remember that there is better out there for you, and take this as an opportunity to grow. Take it as an opportunity to learn about yourself in ways that you never would. There is a reason behind it. So instead of fighting it and resisting it, just accept it and allow this to happen. Flow with the change, accept the change, and go through it. Like, just get through it. You're going to get through it. I promise. There's never something that you can't get through that's thrown your way. You're always going to have the tools to get through it. Just, you can do it. You can do it. I fucking promise you. I feel like there's so much more, but like, if I had to wrap it up, it's just trust. Like, I know it fucking sucks, but it will get better.
Yeah.
It does.
Yep.
It does.
We all survive.
Yes, always, always.
Oh, thank you so much. This was so good.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Love following your journey. Tell people where they can find you. You have an amazing business
that
you have created because you gave yourself space in this relationship. Your creativity has blossomed. You started your own business.
Amen.
Share a little bit about that because it's beautiful.
So I started my own interior decorating business, and it's kind of taking its route into like event decoration, and I'm just having so much fun with it. It really is nice to use my creativity and channel that. And be my own boss, you know? Like, I fucking love that. But yeah, you guys can find that information. It's my handle. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I don't know how to call it. My handle on Instagram is Tara's_transformations. You can check that out. And then my personal Instagram is TNANN. So it's TNANNN.
Perfect.
So that's it.
Oh, thank you so much, girlfriend.
Thank
and I just
you.
look forward to watching your journey grow.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you to Tara for being raw, real, and vulnerable. Make sure you hit subscribe and listen over the course of the next 7 weeks as we have more experts, more interviews, more resources and tools for you guys to use to get inspired to heal yourself so you don't have to go through heartbreak anymore. Make sure you head over to the Holistic Soul Sister Instagram page linked in the show notes below to let me know what you thought of this episode. How can you relate to Tara's story? I know there's something in there that we can all relate to. So share it with me over on Instagram and make sure you tune in next Wednesday for our next episode in Heartbreak to Heal. And until then, keep healing holistically and growing spiritually. Bye, guys.